I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for April 27, 2022. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Present.
Commissioner Lees. Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
I see in our midst this evening former Commissioner Scott Brown, and I would like if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Thank you for coming out. We always appreciate that. All right, so approval of tonight's agenda. Is there such a motion? Motion by Commissioner Andrus.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we can move ahead with the agenda before us. The consent items. Is there a motion to move the consent items into the record?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Rogers.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zimmerman. Those items include the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of March 23, the Board of Commissioners workshop meeting minutes of April 13, the Treasurer's report for the month of April, and bills payable. Paid bills in the amount of $24,571.77, and unpaid bills in the amount of $858,798.39. With that, I'll call a question. All in favor of moving those items into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. My solicitor reminded me to mention that prior to this meeting, we met in executive session to discuss potential litigation. Citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments on agenda items? All right. Hearing none, we have one action item tonight, not a large agenda. It is a motion with regard to the Liberty Trail. Aaron, should I take the motion first, or do you want to discuss it first? Explain it, I should say.
I have a few slides if you'd like me to go.
Well, I was certain there was going to be slides. I just didn't know if you wanted to do that.
Whatever sequence you prefer.
I'll tell you, I will take the motion. Is there a motion for approval with regard to Resolution 22-06 regarding the Liberty Bell Trail feasibility plan adoption and announcement of a $910,000 grant award?
So moved.
By Vice President Rogers.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zimmerman. Before we vote, I'm going to ask that our township manager share his slides, all 52 of them, I think you said.
We only have one item, so I'm going to lengthen this meeting as much as I can, if you don't mind, Commissioners. And I know Ray Masters in the room, so I did my research on the history of this train line, or else he'll call me out on it. And also, Commissioners, we should recognize former Commissioner Scott Brown. He was on the Liberty Bell Trail Feasibility Study Committee and put a lot of work into helping the committee decide exactly where this route would be. So we thank him for those efforts, but I'm going to outline some of those now. One of these things I think is more interesting than the other, in that the trail for this was first proposed in 1966, which is interesting because the Sumney Town 309 connector was first discussed back in the 50s and 60s, and we now see that being built, the Piedmont Highway that we talked about. And now here we are finally building this trail that was also proposed in around that time, 50 to 60 years ago. So, Chief, I'm thinking maybe you have a new police station in 50 to 60 years from now at this pace. But
All gone from the atmosphere at that point.
so the Liberty Bell passenger train ran from the early 1900s to 1951. It loosely, not entirely, but loosely followed a similar route to when the Liberty Bell was carried to Allentown from Philadelphia to escape the British Army. Line connected Philadelphia to Norristown to Quakertown to Allentown. Went defunct in the early 50s when the gas rationing and the moratorium on building of private cars and the assembly of private cars were lifted following World War II, and when the automobile was expanded throughout the country. And so then this trail, after it became defunct, was first proposed in 1966, and here we are 60 years later. Commissioners began a partnership almost 6 years ago now. I was thinking about this today because Ken and I met with the PA Environmental Council about 6 years ago to first discuss a regional approach to this, and we recruited the other towns to join us. A few years ago, commissioners approved an application to apply for funding to go through this feasibility process. These are our other communities that we partnered with, and we received a grant for that stage of the process as well. This trail is part of what they call the Circuit Trail, which it has a lot of attention and a lot of focus throughout the Philadelphia region. A lot of organizations are involved in trying to expand this Circuit Trail throughout the region, including the Pennsylvania Environmental Council and DVRPC and others. So you'll see the study area that this feasibility study focused on, and of the 20-ish miles or so of this route, only a half of a mile was built in the last 50 years, and that was in Hatfield Borough. And the Hatfield Borough was the first town to actually build a portion of it. Since then, Lansdale has built some, and now here we come with 1,500 feet of it as well. So the original train route followed this yellow line. Some of it mirrored the train line that we still have going through our community, which is not a commuter rail, as we all know. This was the original route. We had, throughout the feasibility study, we had several town hall meetings, we had stakeholder meetings, we had a lot of different key people that we interviewed, property owners, and it was abundantly clear that once we leave that Hatfield Borough section, there was not a lot of interest to follow the original route of the train. So after the studies, after the discussions, we developed this route to build the trail, which is somewhat similar to what you just saw. It just shifts back. So the first half of the route is almost identical, and then it shifts after Hatfield Borough and will tuck behind. I'll show you a little more of a zoomed in look. And the section we're going to talk about tonight and that we have funding for is this portion right here behind Tarrington, which is right here, and Giant and the Snyder Square Shopping Center. Portion that Hatfield will be building because of the funding we just received, almost $1 million to build 1,500 feet of trail, which sounds outrageous, but that's just what the cost is. It will connect with a portion that is owned by Didden Greenhouse. Didden's is coming in with a land development soon and have been very cooperative in providing an easement and potentially even helping us build a portion of the trail, which will get worked out in the coming months. And it connects to the existing Hatfield Borough Trail, which is around here on my cursor. It's hard to see without zooming in, but it's that portion. And then what is being proposed is that it off of Broad Street, when you pass the trolley stop, you cross over to Broad, you come across, and what they're showing is it tucks behind the fire station along the railroad there in the Hatfield Fire Station, and then to Penn Street. And the reason Penn was more interesting is because Penn Street has a lot of, first of all, it's all commercial properties and large properties, so there wouldn't be too many property owners that the township would have to deal with in order to get an easement. Why that was a more favorable route. So this is what the committee came up with as far as what we thought made sense to build this trail through the town. Just last week, all of this, not intentionally timed this way, but it just sort of fell into our laps. We applied for this funding a year ago, or maybe in the fall, so it hasn't been quite a year. And this is through a program, this was awarded through PennDOT. It's actually federal money that gets siphoned through the DVRPC and then through PennDOT. So we missed out on the DVRPC round, but thankfully we were awarded in the PennDOT round. So we're gonna have to go through a federal process. So this is gonna take some time to build, but it's 100% covered. So this will cover all of the construction costs. The only township match was to pay for the design of the trail, which McMahon is currently doing.
This on the same side that the Hatfield Borough,
Yes. Yes.
and we're following the PICO right away?
DP&L, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our biggest hurdle coming into this was to get permission from PP&L to build the trail. For whatever reason, the utilities are moving away. It was a big deal. For a long time, it was you build a trail and a utility easement. And for whatever reason, PECO is getting away from allowing trails to be built along its easements. PP&L was sort of shifting that way, but thankfully we got them at a time where permission was granted. So we had that. We had to secure that before the grant application, which we were able to do. And this makes it a really easy portion of the trail, first to decide, but also to build, because it was only one property owner, and it was utility, and we have permission. So it just made sense to apply for funding for this portion.
Did a lot of grading a couple of years ago when they
Yeah. Yeah, so it shouldn't be too difficult. I'm not the one out there paving though, so. But the funding will cover the entire portion. So this study that we went through, the feasibility study, obviously the action item, you think I can get the locked up, Commissioner?
I thought I was going to break a record tonight. Apparently not.
Sorry. So obviously the resolution will approve the plan that outlines this portion in Hatfield. But also just one thing I wanted to show the commissioners, the total cost estimate that Michael Baker put together for the entire trail through all the towns is $12 million. So it's a big chunk of money. But the Hatfield portion, along with Hatfield Borough, because part of this project also is to repave Hatfield Borough's portion. That's crushed stone in many areas and needs some upgrades. So that's part of this, not this grant award, but that's part of the study. Hatfield Borough will be seeking funding for that. Hatfield's portion between the borough and the township's roughly a little over $5.5 million. So with this, we're close to $1 million. So we're 20-ish% away, and we'll have to obviously chip away at the rest. But one thing I didn't mention is the connection to get to here. This is Wedgwood Park in Lansdale Borough. Weicker Park is over here, just for some context. So it would connect, and this is a housing development within Hatfield right here. A portion of it is within Hatfield. Connect toward the back of there, and then up Schwab Road, which, for many of you are familiar with that road. It's not going to be a simple phase of the project. There's going to be a bridge. Going to be a lot of homeowners that have to be coordinated with, involved. So that's going to be a tricky portion of the trail. But that's what was outlined. The other alternative was to come this way, which you see in the green. Hugs the railroad lines, but there was, I think, some engineering reasons why that was the third option instead of this second option instead of this first one. So I guess that will be ironed out over time, but that was what was decided.
You stay on the far side of Schwab, you have less residents to deal with. Industry.
On the right side, if I'm walking this way, correct. Yeah, that is what the plan shows.
Except when you get closer to the end,
Yep, exactly.
closer to Schweiker Park.
Exactly. There's probably half a dozen houses, maybe. Yeah, you're right. And then there's a culvert that will need a bridge. That adds to the cost and the complexity. Yeah, it's not insurmountable. I mean, I think it's going to happen, just a period of time, and really it's just going to come down to funding. So it's going to be constantly applying for grants as they become available over the next few years, and just continue to chip away at it. And each town is responsible to build the portion within, in its boundaries, and everyone seems to be committed to do so. Lansdale, actually, just last week, Hatfield received the $900,000. Lansdale received almost $400,000 for the Liberty Bell Trail. North Wales received $770,000, which is, I think, is almost the entire borough budget, but received that much to make some sidewalk connections through its town. So there's a lot of money right now available for these types of projects. And one thing too, just to note, if anybody is listening, there were some residents that it seems to happen often when we get a big grant award. They call and they ask, why can't we use that money for X, Y, and Z? And it's not how these programs work. There's buckets of money that become available for very specific types of projects, and we can't just take 900 and do it and do something else with it. It's for exactly what we applied for. So I think some people see the amount of money that comes in and they wish it could go toward what they want, but that's not how it works. So apply and try to secure as much funding as we can to continue to complete. thanks to all involved in the process to get us here. It has to start somewhere, and it takes a lot of time, but we're making progress.
All right. Questions or comments? No? Then I will call a question. All in favor of Resolution 22-06, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on outstanding items? All right. Well, like I said, it's a brief meeting this evening. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Commissioner Andrus.
Second.
Second by Vice President Rogers. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming out, folks.